Yo, this is Set with Set Media, guys, and I'm back with another one for you. All right, now we're going to get into this JD Vance interview, and then we're going to do a media analysis because the liberals are upset over Jimmy Kimmel getting, well, not a show canceled, but paused. And of course, there's going to be more. There's, I believe, more details of the more details of the shooter that came out, and of course, we're also going to be getting into that. Well, let's see the Congress. Well, Cash Patel's Congress testimony. We can get into that as well. Sorry there. I had to go ahead and read everything off last second.
Since Charlie Kirk was gruesomely assassinated, the nation still mourning. His family, his friends, his fans. Primetime had the privilege of sitting down with one of Charlie's closest friends, the Vice President of the United States, JD Vance. It's his first interview since the assassination, and JD says he owes his job to Charlie. We flew out to Howell, Michigan, where the vice president toured a metal manufacturing company with a group of Turning Point students. JD, emotional, took us back to the moment when the White House found out Charlie was dead. Mr. Vice President, thank you so much for joining us.
Of course, it's good to see you.
Where were you when you heard Charlie was shot?
So I was in my office in the West Wing. The Vice President actually has a couple of offices. There's the Executive Office Building office and the West Wing office. I was in the West Wing, and I just finished a meeting with somebody. I'm not even sure who. And I looked at my phone, and there were a bunch of group chats, frankly, a lot of them that Charlie was in, where they said, "Charlie, praying for your brother. Hope you're doing okay." And then I opened up my door, and somebody said, "Charlie's been shot." And it kind of hit me like, oh my God, this is very real. This is very serious. And, you know, what happened over the next hour or so, I'm guessing is, you know, we knew Charlie, it's called your body guy, your special assistant, the person who's always with you. And I had a very dear friend in the West Wing who knew Charlie's body guy. And so his name's Mikey, and he called Mike and said, "Hey, like, what's going on?" And what was really, I mean, obviously, you know, the news was discombobulated. No one knew what was actually happening. It was a very chaotic moment, but there was a brief period where we were getting good reports from the hospital. And I don't know if how plugged in you were to that.
I heard those.
And
too.
So, I saw the initial video. I've only seen it that one time. I refuse to watch it again. I don't want to see that happen to my friend ever again. But I initially thought terrible, terrible news.
Yeah,
and then I started to
video to
feel kind of
watch.
hopeful. And then, of course, we got the news from Mike that Charlie had passed probably about an hour before the rest of the world found out. And I was the person who walked into the Oval Office and said, "Mr. President, I'm sorry, but Charlie passed." And that was a very, very tough moment. Because Susie Wiles, the White House Chief of Staff, was in tears, and she doesn't show emotion. You know, she is even keel the whole way, and she was in tears. And I just gave Susie a hug, and I think all of us kind of lost it. And it felt like, you know, we were all mourning our friend before any of the politics or the thought about, you know, what a titan he was and how influential he was to the movement. How do we possibly replace him? We were all just sad because our friend had died. And we supported each other in that moment, as you do with your friends. But man, it was a bad, bad day.
When you told the president Charlie was dead, how did he take it?
You know, the president is very stoic, but he was clearly upset. He just kind of went quiet and let it absorb a little bit, and then just shook his head and said, "Man, he was a good guy, and we really loved him." And that's exactly right. That was a good thing to say. And we all just kind of had that same realization that he was a good friend, that he really loved what we were trying to do. He was a great supporter of ours. And it was a great honor to have.
And it's kind of crazy how everybody was expecting, some people expected Trump to just be like a crying mess about Charlie Kirk, which, I mean, I guess, but it's kind of crazy how Jimmy Kimmel kind of made fun of how Trump wasn't a crying mess. He said, "Oh, he looked like a guy who lost his goldfish." I was like, bro, I mean, why even say that?
Have him both as a friend and as a supporter. And frankly, I mean, Jesse, I would not be the Vice President of the United States were it not for Charlie Kirk. Aside from Donald Trump, I can't think of a single person who deserves more credit, who advocated more for me, both in my Senate primary back in 2021, who advocated more for me to be the nominee as vice president, who advocated more for us to get in there, not just advocacy, but effective action and organization. I wouldn't be the vice president. I wouldn't have this job without Charlie Kirk, and I'll never forget it.
Do you believe that people out in the country should watch the video? I know it's very hard to stomach.
Yeah.
Is it important for people to process it?
Look, I go back and forth on it. I mean, look, it's my friend, and it's incredibly gruesome. And what I think is maybe it's useful for everybody to see at one time, because then you see what they did to Charlie Kirk. But I don't want anybody to remember Charlie Kirk in that 5 seconds at the end of his life. I want them to remember Charlie Kirk.
I mean, look, if you watch that video, the only thing you're going to confirm is why they said he was dead before the announcement. I mean, that's the only thing you're going to see. It's very sad.
The skilled debater. I want him to remember those videos, those incredible videos of him and his wife and his babies, and how much he loved Erica and how much he loved those kids. I want him to remember Charlie for that. I want him to remember Charlie for the guy for when it was these kids behind me. Now, I hate to call you guys kids, but you are, who would, a progressive would step up to the microphone at a Turning Points USA event, and some of the audience would jeer and cheer, and Charlie would say, no, let him speak, because he so desperately believed in this idea that we should be talking with and debating one another. So maybe see the video to understand what the far left did to Charlie Kirk. Absolutely. But that should be 1 fraction of 1% of your memory of Charlie Kirk. 99.9% of it should be a titan of the conservative movement, a beloved friend, and a dear husband and father.
You brought the casket on Air Force Two back to Erica, his wife, to Arizona. What was that like, delivering that to her?
Oh, man, I'm going to try to keep it together here. It was a great honor. As sad and as heartbreaking and as difficult as it was emotionally, I just kept on thinking, what an incredible thing it is to be able to take my friend back to Phoenix, to be able to take his wife and his family, to be able to provide some just basic support and friendship in their moment of grief. What an honor to be invited into Erica's inner circle in that moment of terrible grief. And it was tough, though, man. I mean, I've still, and I think that this is a pretty common thing when you're grieving somebody you love. I had this moment a couple of days ago where I whip out my phone, I type in Charlie Kirk on Signal. I get halfway through a text message before I realize he's not here anymore, and nobody's going to receive this message. And that thing was so much more true in the 20 hours after he had died. And you could see that. I mean, I don't want to reveal too much about the conversation we had with Charlie and his family, but we were all kind of going through these hills and valleys together of, oh my God, I can't believe he's gone. But then just telling stories and laughing and hugging. And it was an amazing experience, but it was very sad. And it just gave me this sense of resolve that they put Charlie in this box. They put him in this box for doing the most American thing possible, which is debating and talking to people, even the people, maybe especially the people with whom you disagree. And we cannot let this incredible legacy get extinguished by an assassin. A couple of the people that traveled with us, it was Charlie's family, and it was his wife and his parents and his sister, all incredibly kind.
And I do believe we do have to keep up Charlie's work. So we do have to go out in front of these people who may not want to hear from us. But hey, if they hear from us, they have to debate us. If they run away, then, well, we know what it is. And here's the problem with that now. The problem with doing things like Kirk is now everybody's going to have some type of, extra layer of security, maybe like these little blast shields that they had in front of the president. Like, it's going to be wild. That's wild to think about. You need like presidential type security to just talk in front of college kids. Like, it's crazy.
People. But there were also a couple of Charlie's dear friends, people who are involved in TPUSA. And you know what? Every single person, both in Turning Points, but also Erica, said is, we cannot let this die with Charlie. That was her main wish. And of course, I've talked to her since then. I'll see her on Sunday at the funeral in Arizona. She really wants this incredible, not just mission and organization, but really a movement that Charlie Kirk built to keep on going long after he's gone. I think that's the best way that we can honor him, is to honor her wishes and to keep Charlie's memory alive.
He touched so many people, especially young people.
Yes.
And as a strong Christian, will that be part of his legacy, bringing people closer to God?
I think it has to be part of his legacy. I mean, how many people did I talk to in the last week who said, yeah, I'm a Christian, but I haven't been to church in 3 years, 3 months. I went to church this Sunday to pray for Charlie. Or how many people did I speak to who said, I was kind of an agnostic, an atheist, but I'm kind of interested in this God thing because this guy really believed that he gave his life for it. If we are true to Charlie's memory, the number one thing that people will remember about Charlie Kirk is that he was a great advocate for the Christian faith. He was thoughtful. I mean, I remember talking to Charlie even in the last month before he died about Catholicism. And
I mean, he had people, bro, he had people going Christian and conservative. He not just got you all politically like voting conservative, but he also had you going to church more at the same time.
Protestantism.
Not ain't the biggest Christian in the world, but I will give it to Charlie Kirk. He definitely spread the message of God. I mean, shoot, better than most pastors.
And all of these different minutiae of the Christian faith, because I said this, he loved God, and because he loved God, he wanted to understand God. And so he was constantly thinking about it. But more importantly than that, he was constantly going out and talking about it. Like, you look at these Turning Points USA events, and you look at the interactions he was having with people, and people would say, "Why are you a Christian?" And he would say, "Well, because I'm a sinner and Jesus saved me. Jesus saved my life." He wanted to be a true evangelist in the truest sense of the word, in the way that St. Paul was an evangelist. And I think that has to be part of his legacy. And I've seen just in my own inner circle, people come back to the church purely because Charlie's death caused something inside them to stir. I would love to see that happen all over our country, and I think it is.
That's why it feels like it's a spiritual attack.
Yes.
That evil showed its face. Do you believe that evil is out there and we have to confront it?
You know, I've always believed that history makes a lot more sense when you both believe in God and follow God, but accept that the devil is real. And I think that evil is very much a real thing. It has a will. It has it has an evil and very negative purpose, but it also clearly has people who are trying to accomplish that purpose. I think in the spiritual realm, but also in the realm that we live in every single day too. So yes, I believe that one of the takeaways of Charlie's death and of Charlie's life is that speaking the truth. What is the devil? What is evil if not the opposite of truth and the opposite of life? They tried to extinguish Charlie's truth and extinguish Charlie's life. We cannot let them. And that is one of the great, if you look at the 2,000 years of the Christian faith, one of the great lessons is that each of us have our role to play.
And trust me, they didn't extinguish Charlie's message. They're not going to stop nobody from, debating or anything like that. They're just going to make us be more safe about it. If anything, that's all they have accomplished is, well, I guess we got to be a little bit more safe. Like I said, who'd have knew you need, presidential level security just to talk to college students or to talk to a group of people. And you're not the president, and you're not a political figure. Crazy. But shout out to Daniel Castro. He says the cost of freedom is personal sacrifice. I mean, ain't that the truth? And shout out to my man Castro for starting us off on a beautiful message, by the way.
Each of us have a particular part of the race to run. We each have something that we have to do, and then God calls us home, and it's on to the next man. We are all the next man in that great journey for as long as God gives us the ability to be that next man.
People are celebrating Charlie's killing.
It's disgusting.
They're saying he deserved to die. How do you wrap your head around that?
Well, one way you wrap your head around it is disgusting evil. What kind of person looks at a grief?
Oh, God, let's remember to double tap that screen and like the video. Let's get more people in the conversation by double tapping that screen.
Being young mother at two beautiful young kids and feels a certain sense of celebration. And I actually think, I don't know if it's a couple people, I don't know if it's thousands of people, but I would ask you, if you were the kind of person who feels joy at the death of a grieving mother and grieving children, what bad decisions have led you to where you are today? And why don't you get back on the right path? I really believe that there are people who recognize that the joy that they're feeling.
Honestly, what Charlie Kirk's death exposed to me is how soft a lot of people are. A lot of people did not like this man because they disagreed with him. They're low-key trying to, try to create excuses of why he got shot and all that good stuff, all just because they disagreed with the man. I was like, you guys are soft as hell. If you guys are trying to justify this, the man never hurt you. He never smoked ill will about your family or nothing. Like nothing. Just because you disagreed with them, you want to try to make an excuse for his death or try to make it sound like it's acceptable in any way, shape, or form.
Celebration they're feeling at Charlie's death is evidence of evil within them, and they have to extinguish that evil. I think that. And I've even seen some social media posts where people have said, I was feeling kind of good about this guy dying, and now I realized that meant there was something wrong in me. That's another way I think that God is speaking to people through Charlie's death, is these incredibly evil people celebrating it. We're seeing it. We're seeing that evil in the public eye for all to see. But I also think people are turning away from that evil because they recognize that it is so opposite of everything good and true and righteous in the world.
If these evil people don't repent and continue to revel in the murder, what should be the consequence?
Well, look, I think the consequence should be, by the way, justice exists for both the people who repent and ask forgiveness. Justice also exists for.
No, I mean, let's be honest. Like, what they're doing now is perfect. Let them go and expose themselves and their hateful rhetoric, and then let them lose their job. There you go. And that's it.
People who don't repent and don't ask for forgiveness. I really do hope that the person who murdered Charlie Kirk eventually accepts that what he did was evil and terrible, but we still got to have justice anyway. And I think that for the people who are celebrating Charlie Kirk, look, we have a First Amendment in this country. The First Amendment protects a lot of very ugly speech. But if you celebrate Charlie Kirk's death, you should not be protected from being fired for being a disgusting person. If you're a university professor who benefits from American tax dollars, you should not be celebrating Charlie Kirk's death. And if you are, maybe you should lose your job, or your university should face a loss of funding. If you are the kind of person who thinks that Charlie Kirk was justifiably murdered, sometimes the government can't do anything about that. But you know what can is civil society. And I've actually been gratified to see all these people standing up and saying, yes, we have free speech, and yes, we have free debate.
But here's the problem. Like, I have no problem with anybody disagreeing with Charlie Kirk. But when you guys want to sit there and, I mean, let's be real. One, you don't even know his real arguments. Or it's two, sit there and champion his death. I mean, that's something we can hear. Like I said, if you have your disagreements with him and you want to talk about some stuff that, I mean, if you want to talk about a 30-second clip that you heard thinking that you know his whole argument, we can go ahead and discuss all that. But you trying to champion his death, yeah, we're not hearing that, buddy.
If you're celebrating the death of a young father, you ought to pay some consequences for it. And the American people are rising up against that evil. It's a great thing to see.
So the Democrats and the media are preaching unity. They're saying there's an equal amount of violence on both sides, and we need to all just lower the temperature and come together. You say?
It's statistically absolutely bonkers. The idea that left-wing violence and right-wing violence in 2025 in America are equal, it's preposterous. The statistics don't bear it out, Jesse. You ask what percentage of political liberals believe that political violence is sometimes justified? It's about 1 in 4. If you ask young conservatives that same question, it's about 1 in 25, which, by the way, is still too high. Right. It should be 0, but the problem is much bigger and much more malignant on the far left. You know, I saw something, maybe it was the ADL or one of these ridiculous organizations that said that right-wing violence is as common as left-wing violence. And then you go and look at the data and you say, what is it that you're causing right-wing violence? One of the things that they called right-wing violence is literally a gang of Black Americans beating up on a Mexican guy. Well, yeah, if you categorize everything under the sun as right-wing violence, you can make your point for you, but that's BS. Nobody's buying it. Look at the way they're selling.
Honestly, due to new polls, these polls that we're about to get into, it has been confirmed that the left is the party of political violence. I mean, they're the ones who have a higher number of people who think it's okay to commit violence against people they disagree with. I mean, but they're the party of tolerance, right?
Celebrating Charlie Kirk's murder. Look at the way that this assassin was radicalized by left-wing and probably trans-related stuff. Look at the way that even if you're not committing an act of violence, you were supporting those who do. You see that so much more on the far left. And I wish my friends who are on the left would just look themselves in the mirror and accept that they have a problem. Yes, absolutely. By all means, let's take down the temperature. But if you want to take down the temperature and you're on the left of center, the first and most important thing you can do is look in the mirror.
The media is now saying the assassin may have been MAGA.
That's hilarious, bro. When they said MAGA, I was like, yeah, you guys sound crazy, especially when the whole, he's living with he had a transgender partner. After you guys heard that, I thought you guys were going to be quiet. The fact that you were still trying to push that he's MAGA or a conservative just because he grew up in a conservative household was hilarious. Honestly, it was just like, okay, you guys are deranged about this. But sadly, and I mean, honestly, it's predictable. But yes, The person who shot Charlie Kirk, Tyler Robinson, was a radical leftist who had a transgender partner. I mean, that sounds pretty left to me. I'm sorry, but no, I don't really know too many conservatives that's with the, the whole transgender partner stuff. Gay, okay, sure, we got some MAGA guys that are gay, but dating transgender, I mean, that's y'all. That's you guys right there. You guys were the one defending him in women's sports, so that's all you.
Well, they would lie because they can't do that simple, basic thing of looking themselves in the mirror. They can't admit that their radicalism and their craziness helped to cause this problem. Look, this is not in dispute. You talk to the shooter's mother, you talk to the shooter's father, you talk to the local district attorney, you talk to the FBI director or the deputy director of the FBI. You look at every ounce of evidence that we have, and it is clear. This is a person who grew up in a pretty normal family, actually had a pretty good home life, who was radicalized by the far left, by the social networks of the far left, by the ideas of the far left, and got so far down the path of radicalization that he killed my friend. That is not a both sides problem. My friend is dead because of left-wing political radicalization. And if you want to cut that out, then be honest about it and look yourself in the mirror. Excuse me. I know I shouldn't cuss on Fox News.
That's okay. Click here to.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, let's be real though. I mean, they do got to cut the shit. Like, yo, just cut the rhetoric out that you guys don't even fully believe in. I mean, y'all calling Donald Trump a fascist, but you don't really believe he's a fascist. But guess what? Your viewers do. When you tell it to them every goddamn day, yeah, they start to believe it, even though you don't. I mean, they're stepping harder than you guys are, or they're putting more forth than you guys are. The people who are saying it, the political pundits, aren't the ones taking.